Hey everybody, it's Adam Scott Campbell with Drawn Through, or it's Drawn Through with Adam Scott Campbell. uh, I'm going to be talking today about something a choice I made some years ago to to uh, go off my medication. Um, I'm sharing this because I feel, not because I recommend going off your medication if you take medication for any reason, but because of both my reasons for why I went off and also for what followed um, that decision. Uh, so I this was this was in 2009 when I made the decision, and it was a decision that was hard to make. I didn't choose to go off my medication quickly. It wasn't a fast decision at all. It was a decision that I made after praying a lot, um, after thinking about it a lot, after pondering, after considering the possible consequences. Uh, so so when I was young, because of my medical challenges and the results or the repercussions of having a brain tumor uh, twice by the time I was 16. Because of that brain tumor and having it twice and the repercussions of it, I I I needed medication, certain kind of medication to keep my brain functioning. Uh, when I don't have the medication I need, it uh, it my brain basically, in short, over time shuts down. I cannot function without medication, um, and a big part of that, if not the main part of that, is that I I I shut down from stress, and s- external stimuli tend to overwhelm me to the point that I can't function anymore because it's too much to take in and I can't stop taking it in when I'm without medication. And so the medication kind of keeps me from thinking over much about things. Uh, when when I was uh, 27, I believe this was 2009. So you know, I'm 41 now. So about 27, 28, in 2009, I started having these thoughts of maybe I should go off my medication. And I didn't know why that thought was coming because I knew what the probable consequences were. Um, it was possible that my brain would shut down for good and I wouldn't be around anymore. So it was a big thought, and I I I thought about it, because despite the consequences that might happen, I'd wanted to be off medication for since I got on it. Because to me, being on medication was a tether or a limitation, a required thing I had to do when I didn't want to do it, and because it was something, it cost money, and it was like I depended on a substance to keep myself going, and to me that was abhorrent. It was a horrible thought for me, and um, so so I thought about the thought that kept coming, go off your medication, and I thought about it. I prayed about it. I don't talk about my beliefs, or I haven't talked about my beliefs, my religious beliefs here on this YouTube channel, on Drawn Through very often yet. But in short, I believe in God, and I believe that He can and does send His children thoughts and feelings and messages if we're listening, um, to help us navigate life, right? And I had these thoughts to go off my medication. The thing was, I didn't. It was hard for me to come to any kind of agreement, any kind of settlement in my heart and mind about whether this was coming from God, because in my mind, why would God ask me to go off the medication that was keeping me alive, right? So, so that was a struggle, and I guess, I mean, I wanted to go off my medication, but I didn't understand. The thought of it's gonna kill me if I go off my medication, that thought was very prevalent, or very strong in my mind, so it wasn't an easy decision, and um, so I just, I started praying about it. I started thinking about it or pondering about it, and trying to come to some understanding of, is this right? Is this the right thing to do, irrespective of the probable consequences? Uh, and I am not recommending, if you take medication, again, I'm not recommending that you go off your medication if you take medication. This is a very hard decision for me, and not something that I recommend at all. You know, and shortly I'll tell you why. The reason why was, I came to the conclusion that I needed to go off my medication, and I talked to my parents about it. At the time, I was under my parents' roof, and of course, they were very, very concerned, because they knew the consequences, or the probable consequences, as well as I did. And so, uh, but we set up an appointment with my doctor, my psychiatrist. We had that meeting with him, and basically, in short, we decided together that I would wean myself off medication gradually, so that it wouldn't hopefully have any long-term dire effects upon me. So uh, so um, so we started to wean me off medication, and the first, over time, well, the first thing that happened when we lowered the medication a little bit, I lost my sense of humor, and I have something of that humor back again now. It's been years, but at that time I totally lost it. I had no humor at all, and I used to have abundance of humor. So it was a stark change for those who knew me, and I you know I persevered. I didn't go back on more medication. I stayed on the dosage that we'd lowered me to. The next dosage brought like a little touch of moroseness, a little bit of um, pessimism, etc., what have you. The next drop of dosage, I started to be a little, like, not a little bit, a lot, like, much more pessimistic, and much more um, everything's horrible kind of thing. And after that, the next drop, as I remember, I um, became less caring about my life, and the sacred nature of preserving one's life and my own life, and I lost that. Um, I lost at the next drop. These are things that happened along the way, and they didn't happen. It wasn't like cut and dried. It wasn't like that, but it was just like gradually I just lost things. I lost the ability, and in addition to the emotional stuff, over time. Um, I lost the ability to think clearly. And this was a very slow process. I would get confused about things that were not confusing or shouldn't have been confusing. I would forget where I put my laundry basket. I would forget how to eat breakfast. I would forget how to walk down the street to a friend's house, just for an example, I would forget how to call somebody. I would forget who I was going to call. Just things like this. I found that over over this period of time where I was going off more and more going off medication, it was like my brain slowly, gradually, incrementally shut down, and it shut down in such a way that I couldn't always tell exactly how, like, it wasn't defined, like the individual drops in dosage, and so, but I mean, these are the first details of it. The next details, or the next parts of this, were that my mind over time started to attack itself. And I don't know. I can describe it, so I will. But sometimes it's kind of hard to describe what it felt like. But basically, I would have thoughts enter my head that were not my making, and those thoughts would hurt. It would hurt to think them, and but I persevered, and I guess my reason for persevering was that I knew at the time that the prompting, or the thought, or the feeling that I needed to go off medication, that had come from God, and I believed in God fully. And so um, when things began to get harder, and thoughts began to intensify and become more crowded in my head, and I couldn't escape them, and it was painful, like psychologically, mentally, emotionally, physically painful to have such thoughts. I chose not to go back on the decision I'd made, because to me, I had to stick with the decision because it had come from God, right? And so when I was in the middle of all that, I came to uh, at some point in that, you know, I the whole way through, I would rely on my relationship with God, and my relationship with God has been, I guess you could say, rocky over the years. I consider myself very wayward, very disobedient, and I see God as my Father in heaven. I'm not putting my beliefs on anyone. I'm just letting you know where I was coming from. Um, so when push came to shove, and I was just struggling so much, and my thoughts were hurting me more and more each day, and I kept deciding, it was a moment to moment decision to keep going, and to keep off medication, and to keep trying, and keep living, and keep not giving up. It was horrendous, and um, it's like, eventually I reached a point where, I started seeing things like, thoughts that were, pictures in my head. One of the pictures I saw was that my mind was this house, right? And um, I was in my house in my head, and I couldn't get out of it. And there was this um, power, or darkness, or whatever, that kept filling up the house, and I couldn't leave. Um, and the more that it filled it up, I would run from it, and I would try to find safe exits to being able to leave, and of course I couldn't leave. So eventually, the safe exits that I thought were there were all blocked, if they'd been there in the first place. And I would find myself um, being unable to escape the pain that was happening, and eventually my mind started to shut down, because there was no escape, and there was no way to function. Um, and I came to the point where um, I came to a point where I realized that I didn't have the strength to keep going. I didn't have the wherewithal to persevere in this, and yet, you know, I needed to persevere because it was what God had told me to do, and so I recognize that this probably sounds pretty, well, first of all, intense to many of you. For those who watch this, uh, I can just tell you it was very real and very painful and very uh, um, horrific. And so um, I reached a point where I felt like my time was drawing near, because I didn't have the ability to escape, and my brain started to shut down, and as we had anticipated it would or might. And so what I did, I did what I've been doing all along, and that was to keep praying. You know, I would keep praying, and I would just, please sustain me, Father, in this. And you know, I'd pray that prayer, and it was a prayer that I started when I went off medication, and it was a prayer that I kept praying, um, for the entire duration of the time I was off medication. So you could say that my closeness with God grew as time went on, and it grew uh, quickly or fully or thickly, or however you want to say it, because it had to. I relied on Him to keep me going. Um, I can I can just say that, you know, when the anguish became so intense that I couldn't think straight anymore, um, I learned something in those moments, that about something about God, and that was that He hadn't left me helpless. He hadn't left me alone. I learned um, that He had uh, sent me help that I didn't recognize at the time, or at the beginning of this journey. I started to feel arms around my shoulders and around my waist. I remember that, and I realized at some point during that thing that my heavenly Father had sent me help from the other side. And again, I don't know what your beliefs are, um, but for me, angels are very real. They're not. They're beings like us, except they're immortal, and they are, well, the angels from the other side that we can't often see are immortal, and they are here on earth to help us. And the more we do what God wants us to do, the better they're able to help us. That's my belief. So I would feel those arms, and those arms around my waist and around my shoulders. And the more I went along without medication, the more strongly I felt those arms around me. And it was, you know, it's challenging to describe, but there came a time where I knew that there were angels around me. I knew that they were supporting me and holding me up day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute, because I didn't have the strength after a while to hold myself up anymore. So they did that for me. I realized at some point, or I came to a point at that I didn't want to be held up anymore, because it was excruciating. It was excruciating to keep living when I wasn't, without angels, capable of living anymore. So it was excruciating. It's the most excruciating thing I've ever felt. And so I didn't want it anymore. And it didn't, that didn't change it, because I kept living as God wanted me to. So, so basically, at the end, or near the end of 9 months into the period of being without medication, 9 months, I was I was you know I was shutting down. Um, my mind was shutting down now. Finally, after 9 months of being without medication, and my my thoughts were along the lines of, it's done, it's almost done, I'm almost done, and God's gonna take me home soon. um, so I uh, I I definitely um, remember that time as being almost sacred to me, because it was almost like the conclusion of a very long journey. Um, I've talked about my history, my journey here a little bit on YouTube. You know, uh, I had a brain tumor at 9. We lost my baby brother at 5. When I was 5. I had my second brain tumor um, at 18, or well, 16. I had surgery at 18, and all the stuff that's happened because of those things. And it's like I don't have I don't have all the answers, but I know that God was by His angels carrying me day in and day out. And I learned towards the end of that 9 month period that He wasn't going to let me go until it was time for Him to let me go, or let me, yeah. So uh, I was at my church. At the time, I was in a young single adult congregation of my church, and so I was walking toward the front doors of the building, um, and uh, and I was shutting down. It was time, and I knew it was time. And I heard a voice in my head that said, "It's time." I heard that voice, and as soon as I heard that voice, I felt and I saw someone that I knew somehow rushing toward me um, from the other side, uh, and I saw that person rushing toward me for 2 seconds. That was it. She came from heaven to me in 2 seconds, and she engulfed me, and I um, and so basically, so I had a celestial heavenly um, being uh, come to me, and she, uh, by her engulfing me, embracing me, holding me, pouring her love, her energy, her spirit, her all into me, during that glorious moment, by her doing so, she preserved my life, and I was given um, given the strength, the ability to keep on going, to keep living for a while longer, a little while longer. Um, and I don't remember that embrace, that encompassing embrace ending. I I felt like, I have no memory of it ending, but life continued somehow, and within probably a week and a half, I was in the psych ward of a hospital here in Denver, um, and I was they were re-regulating my medication again, because I was I decided to go back on medication because I couldn't live without it, and I knew that, but I just felt like it was okay that I go back on it now. Um, but I mean, those 9 months were like, I was I was held up, and I was carried, and I was enabled to keep living. And at the end of it, I was saved. My life was saved so that I could keep living by my angel. And you know, I don't know where you are at in your journey in life. I don't know what you've been through. I don't know um, if this resonates with you or not, but I just, uh, I'll just tell you a few concluding thoughts, but, um, I'm not, I don't consider myself a great hero. I'm not better than anyone. I'm not superior to anyone. Uh, but what got me through that experience was a decision, and the decision was to keep going uh, during excruciating pain. And the more further along I went, the more excruciating it got. And I don't know. I also don't know what God's plans are, or what God's will is concerning you, and what your path in life is. But I know that He has a plan for you, and I know that when you turn to Him, like fully, really turn to Him and just pray and mean it. You have to pray sincerely. When you do that, He's with you, and you may not always feel it, but He's with you. And that, I guess, you call that faith. And faith precedes the miracle. So I just want you to know that I am grateful to you for the strength that you have, the ability that you have to keep going, to keep trying. And we all have that ability, and I urge you and implore you to grow that ability, and to keep going, keep trying, keep pushing forward. The more you push forward, the more reward you'll get. And it's not always, rewards come in different ways, but the rewards will come. And I know they'll come to you if you persevere. And I just want you to know that. And hope you have a great rest of your day. And please take care. Until next time, it's Drawn Through with Adam Scott Campbell. Thanks.